Viewers, if you've been tracking the updates from last night specifically, the big one was Vladimir Putin and Russia recognizing the two breakaway regions from Ukraine, that is the Donetsk Republic as well as the Luhansk Republic. And now what we can tell you is, since recognizing them, Russia has moved some of its troops into the Donbass region. Now, this is a region on the eastern side of Ukraine. It is a sensitive and volatile region. Already over the past few days and years before that, there have been exchanges of various kinds of military firing, artillery shells between Ukraine and the two claimed independent regions. Now, with Russia declaring them as two new countries on the map of the world, Russia has crafted and created and carved out two new countries from the Ukraine into the world map. And now we have, like you can see, these are visuals of Russian troops moving in. And after that, the Donetsk people, some people in Donetsk seem to be celebrating. We've been giving you these visuals and we've been giving you reports from on the ground. We'll just also show you some of the troop and artillery movements that have been happening. Here you can see there are the Russian troops that are heading in to regions that are close to the Ukraine, some of them within the Donbass region as well. And so this is where things stand. Apart from that, what we saw earlier today morning was the United Nations Security Council's open emergency meeting. India also spoke at the meeting, and India called for calm. It sought for a de-escalation and it sought for diplomacy to prevail. It was a stance that was echoed by a number of other nations over there. We also had the Ukrainian ambassador and the Russian ambassador going tete-a-tete, with the Ukrainian ambassador calling the Kremlin's actions in this regard tantamount to a virus, and he made a very strong case. Now, India's stance on the matter is what we are talking about: de-escalation, peace, as well as a resumption of diplomacy to bring this crisis back to a point where we are no longer at risk of war, is what India has called for. Let's take a look now at what India has said at the United Nations Security Council emergency and open meeting on the Ukraine crisis.
As the Russia-Ukraine crisis takes center stage, the UN Security Council is currently meeting to discuss the Russian government's recognition of two separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk in the eastern Ukraine area and its order to deploy Russian troops to them. The meeting was called at the behest of Ukraine and its allies after Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to throw his weight behind the separatists. Caught in a Ukraine dilemma, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador T.S. Tirumurti, expressed concern at escalation of tensions at Ukraine's border at the UNSC, calling for restraint between both sides.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by thanking Under-Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. We have been closely following the evolving developments relating to Ukraine, including developments along the eastern border of Ukraine and the related announcement by the Russian Federation. The escalation of tension along the border of Ukraine with the Russian Federation is a matter of deep concern. These developments have the potential to undermine peace and security of the region.
T.S. Tirumurti asserted that India's priority is its 20,000 students and nationals in different parts of Ukraine and border areas.
More than 20,000 Indian students and nationals live and study in different parts of Ukraine, including in its border areas. The well-being of Indian nationals is of priority to us. In conclusion, we strongly emphasize the vital need for all sides to maintain international peace and security by exercising the utmost restraint and intensifying diplomatic efforts to ensure that a mutually amicable solution is arrived at the earliest.
Meanwhile, Air India earlier announced that it is operating 3 flights to Kiev this week to fly out Indians from Ukraine amid the looming threat of a Russian invasion. As India balances diplomacy and foreign relations, it remains to be seen how it steers away from the escalating Russian-Ukraine tensions while ensuring the safety of its citizens in the war-torn region. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Viewers, we have for you visuals of some of the military deployment that is now going on both sides, the Russian side as well as the Ukrainian side, and also now the two self-proclaimed republics and the ones that Russia views as countries. This is all stemming from the fact that yesterday night, Russia's President Vladimir Putin addressed the nation and in fact the world on what he saw as an existential national security threat to Russia. He primarily hit out at Ukraine. He says that Ukraine has not been able to manifest anything resembling actual statehood in this time, and it is an unstable government. He also spoke about how it is run from the American embassy, and he says that America and other geostrategic rivals of Russia are attempting to use Ukraine as leverage to keep a check on Russia. His primary point also was that Ukraine, Putin feels, is a nuclear threat to Russia. He says rockets from Ukraine can hit Moscow in 4 minutes, and he says that they are going to use it, that is NATO is going to use it as some kind of nuclear base to counter Russia's influence, and hence he made it about national security for Russia. It was a blistering attack. We had not heard this much from him for a long time. He also spoke about the fall of the Soviet Union. Putin rather has always viewed it as a dark moment. He says it was the darkest moment in the 20th century. It was a century with 2 world wars, and yet Putin feels that the fall of the Soviet Union was the biggest event. Let's now take a look exactly at what it is that Vladimir Putin wants, because he has a list of demands that he has made of NATO, and hanging in the balance is the fact that if there is an escalation within Ukraine and the 2 independent regions, then maybe Russia could be provoked into an invasion. That is the fear. Let's listen in now to what it is that Vladimir Putin really needs and wants.
President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree recognizing 2 Russian separatist-held regions of Donetsk and Luhansk in Ukraine as independent. Now, with this action, Putin has legalized his troops in a region known as Donbass. Historically, after the breakup of the erstwhile Soviet Union, Russia has always maintained that Ukraine is close to Russia. Now, in 1991, after Ukraine declared itself independence from Moscow, relations between the two have been worsening. In 2004, when pro-Western former Prime Minister Viktor Yushchenko was elected as president, relations nosedived. Now, after that, the annexation of Crimea by Russia has only made the relationship between the two countries go further south.
And hence and accordingly, given everything that we've told you so far and what you've heard of the various countries' reaction, the world stands at a somewhat of a precipice right now. On one hand, we have Russia, which is aggrandizing over the Ukraine and Ukraine's perpetrated threat to it, and on the other hand you have the US and its NATO allies who are threatening sanctions but no more to Russia. We have also heard from what Ukraine has to say, and Ukraine is mobilizing itself in a big way, and it says it's not Crimea in 2014 anymore, it has a professional army now. Let's listen into the Ukrainian view on this.
Ukrainians across the country voiced regret at Russia's decision to recognize independence of parts of Luhansk and Donetsk regions controlled by Russia-backed separatists. The Russian president yesterday recognized the independence of separatist regions in eastern Ukraine, sparking fears of an imminent Russian invasion. Opposing Putin's move, which is being condemned worldwide. In a strong opposition, the Ukrainian president came down heavily against the Russian president over his latest action.
Вся відповідальність за наслідки в зв'язку зі згаданими рішеннями покладається на політичне керівництво Росії. Визнання незалежності окупованих районів Донецької та Луганської областей може означати односторонній вихід Росії з Мінських домовленостей.
And asked Ukrainians not to fear anyone or anything as chaos continues to grow.
Зробимо все, щоб так і було надалі. Ми віддані мирному і дипломатичному шляху. І будемо йти ним і тільки ним. Ми на своїй землі. Ми нічого і нікого не боїмось. Ми нічого і нікому не винні.
As Russia appears to be moving closer to an invasion, the world fears of another war. Agency report for Republic TV.
Viewers, behind me are visuals of the United Nations Security Council open an emergency meeting that was held just a few hours ago, where India also called for de-escalation and for diplomacy to prevail. A lot of countries, heads of states have been speaking about it. One of the first to react last night was the EU. The EU said that Russia's action in recognizing the two breakaway regions of Ukraine are a violation of international law. At the same time, America is also involved in this. America has spoken, Anthony Blinken has spoken to Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, and it has sought China's hand also and to seek de-escalation. Here you can see, these are visuals. What you see here is a shell. And the significance of this is that there has been an exchange of artillery fire between Ukraine on one side and the two regions, that is the Donbas region, Luhansk and Donetsk on the other side. And over the past few days, we have seen electric installations hit. There was also a shelling went wrong and hit a school. So there is already some amount of fighting. 14,000 people have been killed in this almost civil war kind of situation that has happened in Ukraine over the last decade. And now what we see and what people's fears are is that this is a tinderbox in the vicinity of eastern Ukraine, where Russian troops have also amassed 150,000 Russian troops in the area. And what is being sought right now is a de-escalation. We are waiting to see what America announces against Russia, because remember, the US also, it took one action, that is President Biden signed an executive order preventing any investment in the breakaway regions of Ukraine, but he has not yet announced what he will announce against Russia, and that is expected. So those are some of the situations and aspects that we are looking at very closely. Remember, Republic with the biggest reporting on the ground. We have been joined by people who have reported on the situation from Ukraine, Russia, as well as the breakaway regions, and all that and more on Republic.
At the emergency UNSC meet, Ukraine accused Russia of wrecking peace efforts and ruled out making any territorial concessions after Russia's move.
We invite the Russian Federation to reread again and again carefully today's statement, where the Secretary General considered the decision of the Russian Federation to be a violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. And I thank the Secretary General for this powerful statement.
Acting tough on Russia, US President Joe Biden prohibited trade with Ukraine's rebel regions.
Colleagues, President Putin is testing our international system. He is testing our resolve and seeing just how far he can push us all. He wants to demonstrate that through force, he can make a farce of the UN. We must act together in response to this crisis.
Meanwhile, India called for restraint on all sides and said security of Indians in Ukraine is top priority.
More than 20,000 Indian students and nationals live and study in different parts of Ukraine, including in its border areas. The well-being of Indian nationals is a priority to us. In conclusion, we strongly emphasize the vital need for all sides to maintain international peace and security by exercising the utmost restraint and intensifying diplomatic efforts to ensure that a mutually amicable solution is arrived at the earliest.
Slamming Russia's decision, United Nations said it considers it to be a violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Australia is also condemning Russia's action and temporarily closed its embassy operations in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv due to increased risk.
Russia should step back. It should unconditionally withdraw back behind its own borders and stop threatening its neighbours. We've seen this behaviour before, and seeking to take opportunity to threaten a neighbour for their own advantage is just simply not on. It's unacceptable, it's unprovoked, it's unwarranted. And Russia should understand that by seeking to invade another country, that this cannot advantage them, and it would seriously and significantly cost Russia and their international reputation, and anyone else who supports them and stands with them and refuses to denounce it.
Russia's recognition of the two rebel regions have stoked fears that a Russian invasion could be coming soon. As tensions continue to soar, it remains to be seen if the diplomatic channels to resolve Russia-Ukraine standoff is still open. Agency report for Republic TV.